With the newly added Prestige mode, I thought it would be good to go back and revisit some of the prior builds that I had done with each class in Space Marine 2. Today we're going to be starting off with my personal favorite, the Bulwark, and I'm going to go over the build that I have been using since I've hit Prestige level 4 with this class. So, for me personally, real quick, I'm just going to throw out what I use for the weapons in that. I use the Power Sword pretty much exclusively on this class. Here and there, I'll throw on a chain sword or maybe the power fist if I want to mess around. However, on each one of my classes, the only thing that really changes is the sidearm. Honestly, I think all the sidearms for this class are very much usable in that. I would say mess around, pick whichever one's your favorite. Same thing with the melee weapon. Find whichever one's your favorite. Mess around with all the different perks for the actual weapon. See what works best for you. Just because some of these weapons do overlap with other classes, I personally feel it's not good to specifically tailor them to just one class. I like to try and make them as usable on every different class that I can. That way, if I want to use the Vocalite on something like the Vanguard, I know it's still going to perform well, even if I'm not getting every little bit of advantage out of it. I know that whenever I swap back over to the Bulwark, it's still going to work on that class as well. But let's get into the perk tree here, since this is where most of the changes have occurred. So I will say the base setup for this class has pretty much stayed the same. There have been a couple changes that I've made, but we're going to run through the entire class, starting with the very first column here. We are grabbing Intimidating Aurora. Anytime that you get a perfectly timed parry, you're going to do area of effect damage within 5 meters of where you landed that parry. There is a 5-second cooldown on this perk in that. However, 5 seconds will go rather quick, and it's just a nice little way in that to weaken some of the enemies that are surrounding you, especially if you're in a mob situation. Moving into the next selection, I picked Shock and Awe, which is just giving us a 25% damage boost for enemies that are standing in shock areas. The reason I picked this perk is because it pairs very well with the next one, that being Defensive Advantage. So anytime that you make a perfectly timed parry, you're going to create a shock area. Now, it does only last for 5 seconds, and there is a 30-second cooldown on it. However, when you pair Defensive Advantage with Intimidating Aurora, it is a nice way to, again, kind of weaken some of the enemies surrounding you, and there's a lot of times that just the shock area is going to clean up a lot of the immediate kills for me, especially on my Norris enemies. Moving over into the team perk, personally, my favorite is Effective Formation, just because at this point, a lot of my friends, they're now feeling more comfortable after the Prestige update, playing on some of the higher difficulties like Lethal and Absolute. So this is something that I like to run to help keep them, and not just them, but also myself, alive in battle, because we are seeing a lot more extremists, more likely to see Terminus level enemies, and just getting a 20% damage reduction from those types of enemies is absolutely huge. Now, the other perks within the team category, they're perfectly fine as well. Focus Restoration. Every 40 seconds, a squad member will restore 1 armor segment. It's a nice little thing that can kick on here and there. Gaining back armor is always a huge thing in this game, and sometimes just getting rewarded one for free, especially as you get to the higher difficulties, and sometimes the recharge timer can take a little longer. It can help keep you alive. Same thing with our the other perk, Advanced Conditioning. Very similar to something that the Tactical runs, which is your contested health fades 50% more slowly for all squad members. Moving into our gear, again, there is a little bit of leeway with this. The main perk that I choose to run is Rapid Regeneration, because it restores your armor 300 times faster. However, it does lower the banner's duration to only 10 seconds. To me, it's extremely worthwhile, and we're going to talk a little bit about why that is later on as well. But the main thing is you're getting your armor recharged extremely fast. And one of the things that I've personally noticed is a lot of times if I'm just running the regular banner, while you are getting some of your armor back, there are times where enemy attacks are not going to allow you to fully recharge even 1 full bar. And I do find myself sometimes taking damage to my health, whereas when I run Rapid Regeneration, that is less likely to happen. Now, if you don't want to run that and you want your banner to stick around as long as possible, Purity of Purpose is a nice backup perk. It's just going to do damage over time to enemies within the banner's effective range. Again, this can be paired with Defensive Advantage and Intimidating Aurora. So if you do decide to plant your banner down with that, you have a nice little spot that you can hold, and you're going to be getting a bunch of chip damage on targets. Within the next slot, I do run it Invigorating Icon. So what this will allow you to do is whenever you plant the banner, anybody that's in the area of it, all of their contested health is going to recharge, giving you that advantage of if there's an enemy that can be executed, teammates can heal up on it. I personally like it just because it does allow me to help keep my friends in the battle. Be aware though, there is a 50% recharge penalty to this. If you don't want to run this, whether that be because you feel that you're at a point where you don't need to help out the squad, everybody's doing pretty good, you don't need to worry about having that extra little bit of health. The other perk that I would recommend for this would be Glory Shield. Once again, this is going to stack with some of the other banner effects or just area of effects that you can do. But as long as you're within the banner's range, you're going to take 20% less damage, and also the banner will stick around 20% longer. Now, even with Rapid Regeneration, this perk will add on to it. However, you're only going to get 2 seconds out of it since it's only a 20% buff. Finally, I do also like rejuvenating effects still. I just think the idea of being able to drop the banner down to pick somebody up who's maybe in a very mob heavy area is just a huge thing. Sometimes, just simply leaning over to revive your teammate can cause you to take a lot of damage. Dropping the banner down there, getting some of the extra effects that it offers can be a huge thing that can help you turn the tide of some of these engagements. Again, another nice backup perk if you don't want to run this. I will say this build does still focus a lot on being able to heal your teammates, but if you're not looking to do that and want to take more of a tank role, which is originally what this class was intended to be, the other perk I would recommend would be Inspiration, and that is every squad member within the banner's area of effect, you're going to deal 20% more damage, whether that's ranged or melee. Now, the signature perk is where I did make some changes, and that is I've now equipped Defensive Mastery. Originally, I was running Emergency Countermeasure, which I still think is a phenomenal perk because you essentially get a free shock grenade every time you lose all of your armor. Again, that'll stack with some of the other perks, plus it's a nice way to kind of help do some chip damage to enemies and that maybe make this situation a little bit more manageable. However, I found I've gotten a lot more use out of Defensive Mastery. So anytime you get a perfectly timed parry or block, it will automatically incapacitate a Majoris or Extremist level enemy. Cooldown is 90 seconds. The reason that I have switched over to this perk is, especially now that my friends are more willing to play on like Lethal or even Absolute, we are encountering a lot more Extremists. Even though the cooldown is 90 seconds, there's at least 2 to 3 times per operation that we're doing where essentially I get a free kill on an Extremist, which is absolutely huge. Especially with one of my buddies who's currently running the Vanguard, having unmatched Zeal. It's a nice way to essentially get like a free stim kit. The final perk for that, Armor Advanced, if you are doing a lot of gun strikes or anything like that, not being knocked back is a big advantage. It's not a bad perk to pick, just personally my least favorite of the 3, but have given it a try. I've noticed it does improve the class a little bit. However, I do think the advantages that you get from either Defensive Mastery or Emergency Countermeasure are so much better. Now, in terms of the prestige perks, kind of narrowed it down to the 4 that I think are best, and I'm going to explain here why and show you what they are. So the first one I picked was Resilience, which, very simple effect, Metacase stims will restore 40% more health. Again, as you're playing on some of those higher difficulties, especially where stim kits are more rare, this is a nice way to kind of make up for maybe the lack of them. Plus, if you're dropping your banner in that, you have a really good and let's say maybe you miss just a little bit of the health in that, you have a better chance of healing potentially like a grievous wound, something along those lines. Again, it's just a perk where there's no downsides to it. There's only positives. And I really love it, and it helps keep the Bulwark alive and thriving. Next, I did pick Standard Bearer, and this is the perk that I feel pairs really well with Rapid Regeneration and also Invigorating Icon. As soon as your chapter banner activates, you become invulnerable to damage for 2 seconds. You also cannot be knocked back, anything like that. You essentially become a ghost on the battlefield. Why I feel that this stacks well with the other perks is because, one, you're guaranteed within that 2 seconds to get back all 3 of your armor bars. Plus, if you do have a stim kit, as soon as Invigorating Icon goes up, you can full heal. So it's just an amazing thing. Plus, it gives you a 2-second head start before enemies can damage you, kind of allowing you to very, very quickly set up. But it is huge with those 2 other perks, and it's something that I've noticed. It's kept me alive. Same thing with even using it with our other gear perk, Rejuvenating Effect in that. Again, there have been a couple times where I've had buddies go down. They're in an area that's extremely mob heavy, especially with Majoris. I can hurry up, drop that. I know I'm still going to be okay for at least 2 seconds. They can get up, and now we've got another player back in the fight. For my third prestige perk, I did pick Masterful Defense. So very simple again. Any time that you block a ranged attack with your shield, you get 1% of your ability back. Now the nice thing is this does help counterbalance some of the downsides to Invigorating Icon. So we do have a 50% slower recharge with that perk equipped. However, if we are using Masterful Defense, we can still be getting it back a lot quicker. Not as fast as we would be able to without Invigorating Icon attached, but that's going to be more banners that we can drop, and I'm absolutely here for it. The other nice thing is this goes really well with a lot of the Chaos missions, just because a lot more of those enemies do have ranged weaponry. So I've noticed whenever I play some of those missions, I'm really able to drop that banner fairly regularly, despite the penalty from Invigorating Icon. Last perk that I picked was Powerful Shot. Very simple one, but I do feel that it helps the Bulwark kind of pick up in one of the areas where it's not the greatest at, and that's with range damage. So even though some of the pistols are pretty good, it doesn't hurt to increase their damage a little bit. For me personally, I find that a lot of times if it's on the ground and I can damage it with melee, I can probably take it out. However, if it's something that requires me to use range attacks to take it down, sometimes the pistols can be a little wanting. They aren't bad, but I like to be able to dispatch those targets that I can't immediately deal with melee damage as quickly as possible, so I can focus on my bread and butter. Powerful Shot helps me do that. Also, it applies to all the pistols, so whether you want to use the Plasma, Volcolite, Heavy Bolt, or just the standard bolt, you're getting a 20% damage increase, and sometimes that can be enough to just lower the kill shot amount by 1 shot. But this is my updated build for the class. Like I said, for some people, it may not be the best out there. It does still, I feel like it has a nice blend between the tankiness, but also being able to heal. I might come back and revisit this build if we do ever get like an apothecary or a dedicated healer class. That way I can kind of play this class a little bit more how it was originally intended to be. But as of now, it's still my favorite class. I absolutely love it. Thank you guys for watching. And next week, we're going to be talking about my new second favorite class. I can't believe it. I started off hating it. But we're going to be talking about the Sniper and just how phenomenal that class has become, especially with the prestige perks. But as always, thank you all for watching, and we will catch you next time.